Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. We talk about the problems people face in their day to day lives. Let's start with the video. Growing up with strict parents, the freedom I had in my life was very limited. My parents basically dictated my life, and I could do nothing but stand and watch as they planned my future and every decision that came with it. Over time, I learned to accept my fate and the decisions they made for me. I blamed fate for letting me live as my parents' puppet. I studied hard, just like my parents wanted, stayed home without attending a single party, and never even had serious relationships since my parents were against it. The only thing that brought me joy while staying home was the kids I used to play with in the nearby park. They were around 7 years old, and since no other teenage girl went near the park, I had no other friends there except these kids. It was safe to say that they meant a lot more to me than I expected. For a girl with little to no social skills, I got pretty close with the kids and was good at handling younger ones too. The kids' moms were familiar with me, and when I got closer to them, they asked me to babysit their kids. That was the only source of money I could earn. My parents allotted a certain amount of pocket money every month, but it was barely enough to buy donuts. With time, I got even better at handling kids and I started loving it so much. I began loving kids and wishing to have some of my own one day. That was the only hope that kept me going through school. In college, I got into a relationship, but the restrictions I had at home made it hard to date. Soon, my parents started blaming me for not being able to stay in a relationship longer than 3 months. It got to the point where I started fearing relationships and wished to stay away from them at all costs. After I graduated college with top marks, I got into a great company and worked as an analyst. It was my dad's dream to make me an analyst. I was living someone else's life with someone else's wishes, and I could do nothing about it. I was good at my job, but really unhappy with where I was in my life. I tried to talk to them about resigning, but they didn't let me. Pathetic, I know. But being controlled by your parents all your life makes you lose all sense of individuality. You have to turn to them for every single thing in life. It was around that time when my parents put forth a marriage proposal for me. Their friend's son, who was pretty rich and spoiled. My parents wanted me to be with someone that matched their social and financial status, so they went ahead and accepted the proposal without my consent. I felt betrayed and helpless. The hold they had over me was so immense. Since they forced me into it, I met with the guy. He was decent, but I knew at first glance that he wasn't the least bit interested in me. It didn't hurt as much knowing I wasn't interested in a relationship either. This was purely business, just like our parents wanted. We met sometimes and got acquainted with each other, but never got really close. Our marriage date and every arrangement were made by both our parents. All we had to do was just show up there looking like the bride and groom. The wedding was grand and pristine, something that I hated. After our marriage, my husband and I moved to another apartment a bit far away from home. We lived together like roommates and nothing more. As months passed, we got closer over time, and I started getting attached to him more and more. Just like me, he wanted kids too. So after a while, we started trying for a kid, but failed. When we went to the doctors, they let us know that I couldn't get pregnant. It crushed me, but I knew there were other options to get pregnant, so I tried to calm myself. But my husband's condition was worse. He started avoiding me and was rude to me after the hospital visit. I tried to talk to him, but it was almost like we were strangers. It broke my heart to see him closing off from me. I suggested alternative methods to get pregnant, but he didn't care enough to even listen to me. He was slightly blaming me for not having his kid. To get over the sadness in my life, I poured all my time into work and tried my best to not come home after work. I didn't want to see his cold expression, which made it clear that he hated me. Sometimes when I came home, he wouldn't be there, and he stopped responding to my texts a while back, so I had zero idea about his whereabouts. But it became normal to me at some point. On my birthday, I was sure that I would be spending it alone since he wasn't home for a few days. I was trying to cheer myself up by putting on my favorite movie and a cake. When I started watching it, the door opened and my husband came in. He looked at me and said that he wanted to talk. I was anxious, but complied. Without much stalling, he cut straight to the point that he cheated on me with our common friend and some random girls, too. To be honest, I wasn't as shocked as I had expected. I knew that it was only a matter of time before he went looking for someone else, but what hurt me was that he cheated on me with our friend. She had been one of the few friends that I made after marriage and was pretty close to me, too. He didn't look the least bit apologetic when he confessed that the only reason he stayed with me was because of the hope that I would give him a child. Since that didn't happen, he didn't feel the need to drag our relationship anymore. I looked at him with teary eyes, the hurt and betrayal evident on my face. I kept crying and shouting and even tried to hit him to release my anger and frustration, but it didn't work. He just stood there, emotionless, and simply told me that he would send me the divorce papers. Everything seemed blurry around me at that moment, but I didn't want him to see me any more broken than I already was, so I nodded. He then asked me to leave the apartment since it was under his name. I didn't argue and left without another word. Am I the reason for my suffering? AITA for not being able to give him a child? It hurts me too bad, but no one seems to listen to my suffering. Thank you all for the warm messages. It made my day to go through these messages and feel so loved. After my husband, or soon-to-be ex-husband, kicked me out of the apartment, I had no place to go. I had no friends, and going back to my parents' house was not even an option. I stayed in a hotel room for several days and searched for an apartment, and thankfully I found one. It was plain with white walls. There was room for renovation, so I bought it without hesitation. It was the first time I was staying alone at a place, and I was both excited and nervous. After I moved in, I signed the divorce papers and was finally free. My parents got the news and blamed me for the separation. Apparently, I should have begged him to stay with me even after he cheated on me. My mom indirectly even blamed me for not being able to conceive. They kept blaming me without a break, and when I finally got a chance to speak, I told them that I was done living the life they chose for me and that I was going to live the life I'd always wanted. It was like opening a dam. All those years of bottling up my feelings made me list the ways I dedicated and wasted my life for them. They were shocked, and before they got a chance to insult me again, I left. It felt good to finally break free from them. A few weeks later, I learned from one of my ex-husband's friends that my friend, whom my ex cheated on me with, was pregnant. I couldn't hold my surprised laugh. They let me know that our friend actually baby-trapped him. I could almost feel karma working its magic and felt a sense of peace in it. She was actually one of his flings, but when she showed up at his door several weeks pregnant, he had no choice but to take responsibility, as it was a matter of his reputation. Well, at least he got to be a dad, I guess. I didn't waste my time thinking a lot about them and went on with my life and wished them the best in my mind. After completely settling into my home, I redecorated my space into something that made me feel warm and comfortable. It was the first time that I was decorating my room, and it took some time to find my style, but I finally did it. Once I got into a routine with my new life, I thought about adopting a child and being a single parent. I consulted one of the adoption centers and they agreed. Fast forward a few months, and I adopted a 5-year-old girl. She was the sweetest girl, and we bonded pretty easily. 1 year later, I met my friend in the supermarket, and I was surprised to see her there. I thought she was with my ex-husband, so the confusion was visible on my face. She looked at me guiltily and confessed that she was with her boyfriend now, and that the baby was his. Just then, said boyfriend and baby came into our view. I gasped and laughed at the same time. She explained with an apologetic smile that she was already pregnant with her boyfriend's son at that time, and that he had no financial stability to look after the child. That was why she was with my ex-husband. Soon after her child was born, she left him. We talked a bit more and she apologized a lot for her behavior. I just laughed and let it go. A few days later, my ex-husband visited me at my new apartment. I was almost about to shut the door in his face, but then he started begging me to listen. So I did. He apologized profusely for betraying my trust and being a jerk to me. He begged me to take him back and give him another chance. I felt pity looking at him, but refused it and asked him to get out. He was surprised, but still left. I was in a happy place with my apartment and my daughter. I didn't need extra drama from others. I'm so sorry you had to go through all this alone. As someone who was controlled by their parents their entire life, I know how it feels. NTA, girl, you should never blame yourself for such a thing. He's the jerk for leaving you. I love how you got back at your parents and ex-husband by finding happiness by yourself and being successful. It must have felt good to say no to your ex. I'm a 32-year-old male. My ex-wife, let's call her Cindy, and I got married when we were 19 due to the fact that she was pregnant and we both came from highly religious families. Obviously, the marriage did not work out, and we got a divorce as soon as it was financially reasonable, both in the sense of affording lawyers and such, and being able to afford our lives without our family's support 9 years ago. We weren't really actually together for maybe a full year before that. Although we are not in love, I do love Cindy and we have remained close friends. Some of it was for the sake of our child, but honestly, we don't just tolerate each other for the sake of the kid. Teenager now, insane. We're genuinely close friends and have been for as long as I've known my now fiance, 30, female, which is a bit over 4 years now. Cindy and my fiance aren't close friends, but I thought they were friendly. We always see Cindy when there's anything to do involving our kid, and she's generally invited to everything that has to do with my high school friend group. She's never complained about Cindy being there. So it felt only natural to invite Cindy to our wedding. She's my friend and the mother of my child. My fiance, however, doesn't seem to agree. She didn't say anything when I added her to the guest list initially, but made a lot of comments over the past week or so about how it was a bit weird to invite my ex-wife, wasn't it? And I told her to stop thinking of it like that and think of it as me inviting my close, strictly platonic friend to a very important day to me. I also told her that it was kind of hard to uninvite her at this point, given that the invites have already been sent. I thought that was that, but she told her mother that I was being unreasonable. So now my soon to be mother in law has sent me a very lengthy message on how rude it is to invite a past love to such an event and to please let her know the invite was revoked. Because mostly all of my friends know and like Cindy, I think they're biased when they side with me on this. So I'm coming to what's honestly a more unbiased audience to ask if I'm the AH here. The guest list was made around 5 months ago, invites sent out 4 months ago. We are less than 3 weeks away from the wedding. NTA, but you are starting a new life with a new wife, and she is your priority now. If she's not comfortable with it, then you should consider talking with Cindy about not coming. But first, I'd be asking your fiance where her line is with you and Cindy's friendship, co-parenting, and make sure her boundaries are ones you can live with. NAH. I think it's fair to want the mother of your child, who is a close friend since high school and who you are still friendly with, to your wedding. It's also fair for your fiance to want an uncomplicated wedding and to feel special on her first wedding day instead of having your family fawn over ex-wife if they are still on good terms. But you need to talk to your future wife. If you can't resolve this, it doesn't bode well for your joint future. I actually think it's great that you have such a strong relationship with the mother of your child, and I definitely believe that exes can be friends. I don't think you were wrong to invite her at all. I would imagine that for your teen, it's a lot easier to accept you getting remarried knowing that mom will be at the wedding and give her blessing. That said, There should have been a lot more communication with your fiance before the invitations went out. It sounds like she was a bit passive aggressive about it and you were a bit oblivious. I'm torn between everyone sucks and no a-holes here, but going with NaH because I think this was mostly just a failure to communicate in the middle of wedding planning chaos. My friend asked to carpool with me to an event. I wanted to take my car, and she told me she would have to bring her dog along, which I said was fine. When we got to the event, she asked for my keys, and I didn't really think much of it. I can unlock my car with my phone, so I left them with her. When I got back the car later, I saw that she had left her dog in the car. Please note the car was a perfectly safe temperature and she had access to water. When I let the dog out, I realized that she had clawed up the interior of my car, and there were also scratch marks underneath the window. Apparently, my friend had left the window cracked and the dog jumped out, scratching the exterior. I got the car, brand new, about 2 months ago and want to restore it to its prior state. I took the car into a reputable retailer and they quoted me $3,500 to fix all of the scratch marks. Technically, my insurance would cover this, but my rates would increase. WIBTA if I asked my friend to pay for the repairs out of pocket instead of going through my insurance. Adding some more details for the facts. The event was an outdoor sporting event that I was competing in, so once we got there, I was not with my friend. My friend did offer to take her car, but she was the one that asked to carpool, and I had already packed my car up, so did not want to inconvenience myself, and was just trying to be nice to her. Her car would also not have been able to make it to the event because we were driving up steep, gravelly roads. I think she just offered us courtesy. I gave her my keys in case she needed to access the car for food, water, sunscreen, etc. I could unlock the car with my phone, so I had no need for them. We had not talked about her leaving the dog in the car, and I had no way of knowing until I got back. For those who are interested, my friend did take responsibility for the damages and offered to pay. I did decide to go through insurance and have her pay the deductible plus 3 years worth of the increase in my insurance rate. In total, she is paying me $1,000. We're on good terms, but I have decided to distance myself from the friendship because I believe as a whole I'm being negatively affected by it. This instance was the final straw for me. I reflected more on some of the reasons why I wanted to ask her to pay out of pocket, and I think some of my motivation was out of frustration and rooted in retaliation. I decided that's an unhealthy mindset for me to adopt. I've also talked with her about how she's treating her dog, and turns out that she has been thinking about rehoming the dog for a while since she doesn't want to devote the time to take care of her. Sad, but the dog will live a much happier life. Aside from her tearing up my car, I think she's a pretty cool pup. All's well that ends well, and I appreciate everyone's input. NTA, why did she even bring her dog if she was just going to leave it in the car? I have a dog who loves car rides, but is big and snotty, and the back of my car is rarely without massive, slobbery windows. Fur everywhere, spilled water, and scratches on the back doors from her putting her foot up to stick her snout out, and barely opened windows. I never leave her unattended in my car, and it still looks like a disaster area. If she transports her dog regularly, she would have to know that your car would get, at the very least, dirty, if not scratched all to hell. NTA, did you know that they were leaving the dog in the car during this event? If so, you are partially responsible for allowing that. But the bottom line is your friend's dog damaged your car. She should pay to repair the damage. Why do people think their dog must go everywhere they do? Believe it or not, your dog is going to do much better at home with a pet sitter checking on them than in a hot or cold car, in a parking lot or garage. They don't need to go to the grocery store or Home Depot. They don't need to go on all your dates or over to your relative's house. They don't need to go to your kids' sporting events. Leave them home where they have food, water, a safe temperature, toys, and familiarity.